This is The Guardian.
Hello, I'm Faye Carruthers and welcome to The Guardian Women's Football Weekly. What a weekend. Would any Arsenal fans like to review their predictions this season? Everton make a point and take a point, while Crystal Palace get their campaign up and running as Manchester City go top of the table. And Jordan Modric, makes history, proving good enough is old enough. We'll also look ahead to the return of the Champions League, plus we'll take your questions, and that's today's Guardian Women's Football Weekly. What a panel we have today. As always, Suzanne Wrack, our resident Everton fan, Marva Kreel, desperate to be here this week and rub your nose in it.
Yeah, such a sad thing that we've not got Marva on this week.
Yes, Susie books all the guests all the time and just vetoes if anyone dares to beat Arsenal. No, she doesn't. Tom Gary, fresh from the King Power, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. I'm the smug person in the top 22 of the Guardian's Fantasy WSL League out of about 500. So I'm going to just... Did we last about 30 seconds before I mentioned that? Maybe we got to a minute. But yeah, I might mention it again later just to be on the safe side.
How long are you going to dine out on that for?
Oh, at least another week. Until
I have not checked. Are you top of the guest tree, if you like?
Well, I'm 265th.
I haven't even checked how far down I am. Sophie Downey, where are you? How far are you in the table?
I don't partake in Fantasy League because I'm too competitive and I hate losing.
Wow.
So it's just better for me if I don't.
I don't think you can use that as an excuse. I'm not having that at all. Let us know how you're getting on, by the way. You can email us or, of course, you can get in touch with us on social media. But let's crack on and find out what happened this weekend in case you missed anything. Of course, with the postponement of Chelsea, Manchester United, we've got one fixture short to go through, but still loads to discuss. It was quite eventful, wasn't it? History makers, comebacks, spectacular goals, big refereeing decisions. The WSL fixtures this week certainly delivered. Feels like we say that every week, doesn't it? We'll start at King Power Stadium, though, where league newcomers Crystal Palace pulled off one of the surprises of the weekend to earn their first ever Barclays WSL victory. It finished Leicester City 0, Crystal Palace 2, thanks to a second half brace from Annabelle Blanchard to move them up to 8th in the table. Palace have been through it in recent weeks, Susie, haven't they? Many have written them off, including all of us, after their opening 2 games. Have they proved people wrong with that performance?
I think on the preview pod, or maybe I'm rewriting history a little bit. I've been rereading 1984, so that's entirely possible. But I think we said that Palace wouldn't be as easy to beat as Bristol were because they have been steadily building. I mean, you could see that in the way they play. In the support of the fan base that are clearly on a journey with them and invested in their journey because they're seeing progress and good signs. They've invested in players that complement the ones that they've kept that got them up with WSL experience, young loanees from top sides, Poppy Pritchard from City, and then the 3 youngsters from Chelsea, Lily Woodham from Seattle Reign. So, I think they weren't going to be complete pushovers this season, and I think we sort of said that, but yeah, I mean, I think we kind of had them as one of the favourites for the drop. But yeah, the signs so far, despite the sort of first 2 games showing them conceding so many goals, have actually been pretty good. I mean, I think in both those games there were signs of real promise there. It's just going to take a little bit of time for them to get used to sort of the physicality and mental demands of WSL football. So surprising and not surprising in that we don't expect them to beat Chelsea, but could they get points against a team like Leicester? Yes, Leicester have been looking good as well, but that's definitely been a more realistic prospect for them, and these are the games where it's going to be really interesting to see exactly where they're at and where they sort of slot into the ecosystem.
Yeah, it feels like more of a gauge, doesn't it? This is what their manager, Laura Kaminsky, had to say. We've made history for the club, which I'm extremely proud of. I thought the players deserved the points from their performance. Now we need to keep our feet on the ground, not be too high with the highs or too low with the lows. I was asking the players to really stay steady with the games that we lost previously, and now I certainly won't be asking them to celebrate too hard. How hard will it have been to steady the ship after the first 2 games, Sophie? It was a bit of a baptism of fire for them.
It was. I'll first say that is a FA-coded quote, if ever I've heard them, straight out of the school of FA coaching. Don't get too high, don't get too low. I've heard it a million times.
Sit on that fence with those splinters poking into your backside.
But yes, I think it will have been tough over the last couple of weeks, more externally, I think, because there's been so much pressure heaped on them. I am of the camp that even that tour against Chelsea, I thought I saw enough, as Susie said, that made me think they'd be okay at times this season. Whether that keeps them up, I don't know, but I think they will at least compete. It will be tough, but I think Laura Kaminsky is very well known as a people person. She's very good with her player management. They all trust her. And I think it's just keeping the noise out and, the concentration on like what they're doing. When they play to their style, I think that suits them best. When they're trying to bank up, they struggle. When they try to attack or push forward, that's when they look at their best. And I think they need to keep trying to do that. Their worst 5 minutes yesterday was after they scored the first goal, and they looked like they were deciding to sit back and bank up. And they really, really struggled. And then they were like, no, we're not doing that. And they kept going forward. So I think they just need to remember their principles and not to get too scared of the league, I guess, in terms of trying to change that.
Yeah, Leicester have had a season in the league, and we know that they can create, but Palace actually out-created them, Tom. What were the keys to this victory for Crystal Palace?
Well, one of the keys was a very impressive performance by an 18-year-old Lexi Potter on loan from Chelsea. We saw an all-round performance of a real number 6 that looked like she was a sort of a 26, 27-year-old player, not a teenager. She was doing the dirty stuff, winning the ball back, but also doing the quality stuff in possession, getting out of tight spaces, looking really composed on the ball, helping with the way that Palace were building out from their own half by doing those little bits of neat passing. And I mean, you're all going to throw shade at me for making this kind of high pressure reference already, but there were massive Keira Walsh vibes about that performance. Like she was just screaming Keira Walsh at me throughout the whole of the first half in particular. And still got a lot of learning to do, of course, still only 18 years old. But that was such an impressive performance to be the best player in the middle of the park for either side in a game where she was surrounded by much older players. And then add in that you've got the clinical finishing of Annabelle Blanchard, who played very well. I thought Katie Stengel looked really good as well. And there was a nice balance. They thoroughly deserved to win. My worry for Leicester is that although they had such a positive pre-season, that first league win since February is still eluding them. It's 11 league games in a row without a win. And that's got to be a worry now for confidence that they've waited so long to break that winless run in the league.
February's a long time, isn't it? And and there's been a lot of turmoil at the club as well behind the scenes. So interesting to see how they're going to ride out this season. But early stages, as we always say. Sticking with Palace though, Susie, and Tom mentioned Annabelle Blanchard there. She scored 11 in 9 games in the Championship last year. It seems quite apt that she's kind of kick-started their campaign this time round. Can we see her as their most prolific scorer this season?
Potentially, for sure. Obviously, she's proven that she can do it for them, and I think getting off the mark will have such a big impact confidence-wise. It was such a beautifully worked goal as well, real team goal, and then a really instinctive finish. And they're not going to get a lot of chances necessarily in quite a number of the games this season. But if she can react in the way that she did in that game, then there's huge potential. We also spoke to her at the WSL Media Day, which is where we have 4 players and a manager from each team sort of coming round and speaking to us all ahead of the season. She just spoke so brilliantly. I mean, she's only ever played before 2 games in 2 different seasons for Liverpool back in sort of 2017-18 and then 18-19, and then has been in the Championship ever since. So it's like really nice to see a player like that who's not really had their chance at the top level finally kind of get up there and be able to make their mark. I think they're the stories that are really kind of special about the teams that come up into the top flight. But yeah, she could have a really important part to play in their season and in the relegation fight.
Disappointing afternoon for Leicester, Sophie. We mentioned it with Tom there earlier. There has been a few things going on behind the scenes, but they still haven't had that first win under their new boss, Amandine Mikel. What went wrong, do you think? Any major causes for concern or just outplayed?
I think it was probably just partly just one of those days. It was the end of a very busy week for them as well, as it has been for every team, so that's no excuse. They've all had 3-game weeks, but I do think that's the first time Amandine has had to do that in this league as well. I spoke to Amandine Mikel afterwards, and she said the intensity just wasn't there. She didn't seem too worried. She just said they couldn't get up to the energy levels that she's seen in previous games, say the energy levels that they showed against Arsenal the weekend before. I think it just took its toll a bit. And I was a bit surprised to see kind of the change in midfield with Sari Takarada kept coming in alongside Ruby Mace. I really rate Takarada completely, but she is a more defensive-minded player than she played the 6 last week when she came on for Ruby Mace. So I did think that was a bit of a strange decision for a team that are kind of wanting to attack. But they had their chances as well. That's the other thing. Jutta Rantala is an absolute class player, and she had 3 attempts on goal that you would expect her to put away any other day. So I think it was a mixture of things. No panic yet, that's for sure.
No panic. And just a quick one, because we have been mentioning, Tom, a lot this season, goalkeepers. None of us are goalkeepers, so I don't know why we're protecting the union so much, but we've been talking about the quality of goalkeeping on the pod quite a lot. And Janina Leitzig obviously started in goal for the Foxes after Lise Kopp played the first 2 games and produced some brilliant stops to keep Leicester in the match. It's another fascinating battle for the number 1 shirt, and we seem to have those across the league at the minute.
Yeah, actually, and without Leitzig, it could well have been 4-5 goals for Palace. I thought she played very well. I personally have always thought that of the two, that Leitzig is the stronger goalkeeper, but there's very fine margins between them both. So Leicester are in a healthy position there. It was quite well reported widely that Manchester United were inquiring about Lise Kopp, and Leicester were very sort of steadfast in their determination to keep hold of her. So clearly Amandine Mikel wants to have 2 top-class goalkeepers, and that is beneficial. But maybe that's going to help them, because they're both going to want to. They know that competition is there. You can't take anything for granted, so they're both going to be trying to play their absolute best every single training session to try and win the shirt.
Yep, certainly are. Needed maybe some decent goalkeepers. The amount of goals that were flying in at Brisbane Road, what a treat fans that went there were treated to yesterday. It finished Tottenham 2, Liverpool 3. Cornelia Capoch produced a brilliant finish to fire Liverpool into an early lead. Spurs levelled through an unfortunate Taylor Hines own goal. Marie Hobinger's spectacular free kick, by the way, well worth a watch if you haven't seen it already, restored the lead before Claire Hunt equalised for the hosts again. And then stoppage time drama-rama and a contentious 95th minute penalty from Hobinger made sure that Liverpool took home all 3 points. We'll get to the performances of both sides in a minute, but firstly, Susie Wrack, penalty decision against Ashley Neville. Correct or incorrect?
Can I sit on the fence? We've sort of seen them given both ways, right? I don't think they can have too many complaints about being given, but also it felt a little bit soft at the same time. And I know, kind of Ashley Neville was sort of being blamed for it, but I actually thought it was Molly Bartrip sort of almost like leaning back into her that brought her down, rather than it necessarily being Ashley Neville coming sort of heavy from behind. I sort of thought they played pinball with her a little bit. So okay, penalty then. I'll say penalty, but because I'm talking my way into it. But yeah, I think it probably was.
Producer Sophie's face is an absolute picture. So before I just saw her face, which was jaw on the floor, she had put in our shared document in capital letters, and I could see her saying it was not a penalty. I was surprised at the just singular exclamation mark. She then highlighted it. The only thing, it's not in bold. So just doesn't. Your thoughts
if it's
don't
not in
count,
bold, it
Soph.
doesn't count. Yeah.
That was funny. Listen, Matt Beard's relief, though, palpable on the sidelines. Avoided dropping points from a winning position for the third week in a row. How nervy was it for him? I mean, I'm always stressed watching Matt Beard on the touchline anyway. But wow, that was another level, Soph.
Yeah, he was definitely thinking, oh no, not this again. And they'd had so many chances, especially in that first half, to kind of put the game to bed, and they just couldn't do it. And I did tweet when that own goal went in from Taylor Hines. I was like, he's a literal walking emoji. He was literally the face palm emoji. He had his head in his hands. He was like, this is not happening again. So there was a big celebration on the sideline at the end of the game. You could see the relief kind of emanating out of him as they got that important 3 points, because I think while he would always say that they've done pretty well at the start of the season, he's not worried. You can only tell by Christmas what their season's going to be like. It's always about that first win. And I think it becomes a narrative if you keep dropping points from winning positions. And they put that to bed, I guess, in this game. And they've got that valuable first 3 points, and it's a real big foundation for them to build on over the next few weeks.
In the men's game, it would be known as Spursy. Little one there for Susie to make her happy. Tom, let's talk about Marie Hobinger, because she took the league by storm in her first season last year. Matt Beard described her as a Liverpool legend after the game. I mean, that's a little bit OTT, perhaps. She's only been there just over a year. There'll be some past Liverpool players going, excuse me? But what does she bring to the Liverpool midfield? Still give her some love without using the far too bandied around phrase legend.
Yeah, I would say what she is doing more is just really driving this team to higher standards all the time. Legend is too early, yes, but the quality she brings, we need more of this. We need more players with the ambition to shoot from outside the box. Let's just do that for the first thing. But
send her to Arsenal.
Well said. But she, I think, not just the long range shooting, but the quality she has on the ball, the kind of purposefulness with the way she moves the ball forward, the way that she takes Liverpool, into attacking positions. There's far too much sort of passing sideways and backwards that goes on in this sport, and I really like Herbinger's sort of, mindset and the quality way she strikes the ball. Has won them this game, but also I think probably at least 4 or 5 games last season swung on her ability to do that as well. So yeah, Matt Beard's gone a little bit early on that, but you could sense the relief actually, because I think they were the better team in both of their first 2 games, significantly actually, and yet drew them both. So to get this one over the line with that little bit of extra quality from the free kick in particular will be really pleasing for him.
Tottenham looked a little bit flat though, Susie, didn't they? Just 3 shots on target. Is that a worry, or are we still in Villaham we trust?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think every manager's got to have a bit of time, right? Like it's a bit too soon to throw him out.
Susie, we work in football.
Touché.
We can switch from one day to the next as to how we feel whether a manager should be cut or not.
I thought Spurs had decent moments, and obviously a dominated possession, significantly more passes, better pass accuracy, all those things in their favour. It was just they didn't really do well up front, which isn't normal for them. It's not like, comparing it to their rivals Arsenal, where it does seem to be a consistent problem. This isn't a consistent problem for Spurs. So you'd like to think that it's a blip. They did 3-2, but they didn't actually score any of the goals. It was some really, really poor defending and 2 bad own goals that sort of kept them in that game. But I don't think it's anything to worry about too much. I think they've got enough quality in attack and in the midfield to be able to create chances and get shots on target. It's just a matter of bad day at the office. I don't think it's a kind of anything terminal. Yet.
Yeah. Oh, wow. She has to stick the little Gunners
Jump on my
nudge
fence.
in there at
No,
the
I've got
edge.
to jump on my fence.
Plenty of drama on display in Crawley as well on Saturday. Just the 6 goals, 2 red cards and 2 penalties to go through. What a bonkers game this was. Brighton 4, Aston Villa 2. Villa took an early lead through Rachel Daly, but it only lasted a couple of minutes. Nikita Paris responded with her first WSL goal for Brighton. Pauline Bramer then opened her account for the season before Daly levelled from the spot just after the break. Then it just got a bit crazy. 15 minutes left to go. Paula Thomas saw a straight red for a foul on Kiko Seiki. Fran Kirby then dispatched the subsequent penalty, which restored Brighton's lead. Then they were also reduced to 10 when Poppy Pattinson received a second yellow card. This time, Michelle Aguimang made her mark in injury time, making sure that Dario Vidosic's side consolidated the 3 points. So if you had this day down as the game of the weekend, and it definitely delivered, it was quite fun.
It was very fun, and I'm glad that my prediction proved to be right. I did have a look at the fixtures ahead of the weekend and was like, that's the one I want to be at. And poor Tom had me sat next to him throughout the game, chirping away, getting thoroughly excited. So, no, it was incredibly exciting. I think it was 2 teams that are so evenly matched at times that it was quite hard to see where they would fall apart. I would say that for both teams, it's in the defensive areas that they can sometimes struggle. It's when they're being pressured and when they keep insisting on passing out from the back. That's where the errors come in. And I think at least 2 or 3 of the goals came from those situations where I understand what they're trying to do, the kind of style of football that both Dario and Robert De Pauw are trying to instill in them, and that kind of passing out from the back stuff, but it just causes a lot of errors. I do think that the card changed it as well. I do think if we'd had 15 more minutes of 11v11, we might have had a different outcome.
Interesting. Brighton have hit the ground running so far this season, Susie. I mean, when we talked at the beginning of the season about the acquisitions that they've made, some real potent goal scorers in there, 4 different players on the score sheet in this game. That's quite crucial going forward, isn't it? Particularly the raft of injuries that we're seeming to see at the minute.
Yeah, not to put everything in an Arsenal lens, but my God, I would love to see Agyemang back at Arsenal for a little bit. I thought Paris was brilliant. Obviously got a goal and an assist, proper poacher instinct, creative in attack. They just look really good. They look really fluid in the way they play, which feels weird, relatively speaking, for a team that's had such high turnover in players, in coaching staff. There's been so much change there, and yet they really seem to be clicking in a way that I wouldn't expect for a team this early on into their sort of new era, for want of a less crap phrase. I'm hugely impressed with what they're doing, and 4 goal scorers, you're never going to complain about that, are you? For a team at that level of the table to be doing that in a game against a team that you kind of see very, very closely matched with them is hugely impressive.
Yeah, it really is. And Sophie mentioned that it would have maybe have been a different outcome if it had been 11v11 at the end of the game. But he was very unhappy, wasn't he, Robert De Pauw, China in his hand, with the Thomas red card decision. Sorry, I can't help it now. Was his frustration justified, Tom, would you say? And just the 1 point on the board, it's going to take time for him, isn't it, for him to lay down what he wants from his Villa side. But what did you make of it all?
Yeah, I think firstly, he was unhappy, but he was quite fair with what he said, Robert De Pauw, about the decision. He was quite specific not to criticise the referee or have a real go at them, and repeatedly said that he was sort of essentially saying they're only human. It wasn't the kind of anti-referee rant that we sometimes see, and I thought that was quite refreshing. Similarly with I think Robert Villaham and a few other managers this weekend have all said similar things. It was quite respectful to the referee, so kudos to them. But no, going back to your question, I don't think there's massive cause to panic for Aston Villa. I thought there were lots of really positive signs for them over the course of the game. I think they can feel quite unlucky with the straight red card, which most people in the ground, I think, were very surprised to see a straight red emerge there. I think it was a penalty. For me, that felt quite harsh, and I think most people in the ground would tend to agree. Maybe the officials felt there'd been a deliberate elbow or shoulder towards the head at first glance, but on the replay, I'm not sure that was the case. So that's my take on the first red card, and that did change the game, at a crucial point when both teams were going to try and win it. So no, for Villa, I mean, there are really positive signs for Villa with the type of football that they're playing. They created a lot of chances. I think what stuck out for me was just how much stronger Brighton's bench was. The players they were bringing on in the final 20 minutes were really changing the match, and that was perhaps just a little. If I was a Brighton fan, that would really excite me. And the other thing that would really excite me if I was a Brighton fan was the tone of Dario Vidosic's post-match comments to us were very much of the mindset of that he was pleased, but that he thought they had loads to still improve on. He was almost a little bit critical of the performance. And if you're winning 4-2 against Aston Villa and you think that there's lots of things you're not happy about, that suggests to me that they're really going to go places this season.
Yeah, and as you say, Dario Vidosic, I think I called him Vidovic earlier for no reason whatsoever. So anybody listening to that who picked me up on it, apologies. Just rolled off the tongue. As did Robert DePauw's comments about Jordan Nobbs. I mean, we talked about Matt Beard using the legend word, bandying it around, but Robert DePauw has basically called Jordan Nobbs Luka Modric, which is quite incredible. I knew what he meant, though, in terms of the energy and the experience she brings on the pitch because she's one of the older players. He used the word good enough is old enough, like a little Modric in midfield, which is a nice comparison. I hate the comparisons. I can't bear it. Any players, young players brought in who are compared with old players, male or female, drives me nuts. But I see what he means at the same time. But 193 league appearances is quite incredible, so she becomes the all-out WSL record appearance maker. Bearing in mind the injury history that she's had, how much of an achievement is that?
I mean, it's absolutely huge, and I think people sometimes maybe underestimate what Jordan has done in this game because maybe she hasn't been at a couple of major tournaments for England and therefore missed out on that stage, but I still view her as one of the most technically gifted midfielders that this country has ever produced. She can play in any position in that midfield area. At the moment, she's playing a bit deeper. She's playing more like a maybe sometimes number 6 at times, but she's an 8. She can be a 10. She can create. She's box to box. She will never stop running. And she's playing this season as if she was 17 years old again, which you'd just love to see. And along with Drew Spence, if I'm not wrong, she is the only player to have played in every single WSL season, 15 seasons. It's quite incredible. And I do think the word legend, you're right, it gets bandied around a bit too much. But I think when it comes to the WSL and it comes to Jordan Nobbs, it comes to Arsenal and now with Villa, she can definitely be called a legend.
Yes, I agree with you on that one. Right, that's it for part 1. In part 2, we'll round up the rest of the weekend's action, including Arsenal, which means that Susie is just disappearing. She's not coming back for the rest of the pod. Oh, she might do. We'll see. We're also going to look ahead to the start of the Champions League group stage. Welcome back to part 2 of the Guardian Women's Football Weekly. Let's continue with the rest of the weekend's WSL action. Susie Wrack. It was a case of the same old story for Arsenal as they were held to a goalless draw by Everton at the Emirates. Don't worry, I'm going to ask Tom about it first. Just an inability to break down a deep, compact defence has been a theme of Jonas Eidevall's time at the club. It finished Arsenal 0, Everton 0. Tom, the stats are conclusive. 21 chances created, 5 on target. Eidevall spoke a lot about how they were too slow on the ball as well. What went wrong?
Well, it's becoming a bit of a worry for me that Arsenal every now and then just have this problem with trying to grind out the nasty win, the really horrible, ugly win, the kind of result that has won Chelsea titles. And before Chelsea fans say I'm accusing them of being an ugly team, I'm not. They play wonderful football, but just every now and then you've got to have an off day and still win, like Chelsea went to Tottenham, I think it was, right at the end of last season, away from home. Tottenham played very well. Chelsea didn't have many opportunities, 1-1-0, job done, go and win the title. And Arsenal aren't doing that often enough. And this was a classic example, I think. You ask what's going wrong. A lot of people were asking why we didn't see, Rosa Faye or Kathleen Kreel try and brought on to, break down the Everton defence. Maybe there's just a slight lack of a plan C, plan D, plan E, or whatever it might be, the different options to try and break down a defence like Everton's, which was organised well. But I would also say let's not panic. I mean, I don't think that it is a big disaster. There's lots of people overreacting on social media to the one game. Look, Arsenal haven't lost a game yet. Chelsea away was the only defeat in the last sort of, I think, in the league in the last 8 months. So there's no reason to really panic. But certainly they really need to work more on finding new ways to be creative and just get through those lower blocks to solve this problem, because you can't afford to drop points at home against Everton. With all due respect to Everton, who played very well, but none of the title contenders will have expected to drop points at home to them. That's just a reality.
Overreaction on social media? Surely not. We will talk and give love to Everton for that performance shortly, but first I'm going to make Susie squirm a little bit, because it's another 2 points dropped for your team. 2 draws and a win to kick off the season. You're 6th currently. Look, 3 games in, no need to panic in the slightest. I'm just enjoying this because I won't get to until for most of the season, I predict. But is it problematic in terms of looking ahead towards the end of the season, when you know how tight the league can get, and dropping points this early when you're trying to mount a title challenge is a problem? That's question 1. Question 2 comes from Natalie, who's been in touch with us and asked whether Jonas Eidevall is going to last the season.
I mean, it's not ideal. The frustrating thing for me is just how narrow Arsenal were. They're just trying to in a low block. You can't keep trying to force through the middle, and that's just what they keep trying to do, trying to find that eye of a needle pass or movement, and it just wasn't working. But they don't change that up at all. They don't go wide. They don't kind of bring on someone who has the ability to unlock that through the middle. It just super frustrating. I agree. I don't think it's completely disastrous. If you had asked me in previous seasons, I would say that's it, title chance is over. But the reality is as we said at the start of the season, and as we said towards the end of last season, blah blah blah, it is getting tighter. The middle teams are much better. I've repeatedly said so far this season, the level of coaching of those middle pack and lower end of the table teams is really, really good. So dropping points to them, I think, is going to be more normal than it usually is for the top 3. But that said, to be sort of on the back foot this early on in the season and chasing is not ideal, to say the least. Will Jonas last the season? Yeah, I don't think Arsenal are going to ditch him mid-season, unless there was a complete and utter crisis. They crashed out of the Champions League with 2 games still to play. The title race was over by Christmas, and they were out of the FA Cup or whatever it may be. If that happened by sort of end of January, then who knows, anything can happen. But I think it's so unlikely. They're quite determined to stick with the managers and give them time across the club at the minute. So I can't see that happening. Would he be here at the end of the season if they have a really, really poor campaign? Who knows? It's anyone's guess. But I look forward to discussing Luton Town's ups and downs next week, Faye?
I was waiting for you to bring that up. Unfortunately, this is a pod about women's football, and the men's championship has no place here. No place here at all. By the way, the Hatters women, I will update you on how they're getting on in their league. But right at this moment in time, we don't discuss the men. Sorry. It's a no-go zone. Sophie gives some love to Everton. This is what Brian Sorensen had to say. The resilience, the togetherness, the willingness to fight for each other, the coolness, the calmness. I'm super proud is what he had to say. Look, they've been through it, haven't they, the past few weeks? But it was a real gutsy display from them.
It was, and I'm actually really pleased for them. I just think that when you put in a display like that with all of the energy that they they put in the hard work that they, throughout that game. It will have taken a few tired legs after a busy week as well, after a 3-game week. So I think it's just rewards in that, with the effort in that. But I do think that they nullified Arsenal. They knew how to nullify Arsenal. They know that Arsenal have this problem with a low block, and they went for it. And I would like to shout out Courtney Brosnan as well. I think she is a highly, highly underrated goalkeeper in this league. I don't think we talk about her nearly enough. I think she's one of the best shot stoppers there is out there at the moment. And she saved 3 penalties midweek against Newcastle. And she made some huge stops again at the Emirates. She turns up on the big occasions, both for the club and for Ireland as well. So I just want to give her flowers.
Yes, thank you, Susie Wrack. Susie Wrack, as I'm just looking, and by the way, I always keep an eye out for Luton ladies, and I haven't done today because I came straight into the booth to record. Yes, we're bottom of the league. Thank you, Susie, for pointing that out. Cheers. Wonderful. Anyway, who invited you on this pod? Damn it! Co-presents the pod. This is not fair. Right, anyway, let's not talk about... It's why we don't talk about fantasy football either. Let's talk about Manchester City, Susie's other favourite team. Top of the league, Manchester City, in fact. Their second win of the campaign. They beat West Ham by 2-0. Lauren Hemp and Mary Fowler on the score sheet. Barcelona are on the horizon, and actually Gareth Taylor decided to rotate, which is something we've not seen that much of under his tenure. Bunny Shaw and Viv Miedemar rested. Jill Roord got her first start in 9 months after returning from an ACL. It was great to see her. Tom, how important is it for City to see her back?
Huge. Absolutely huge. And I think not just that, but you mentioned Gareth Taylor being able to rotate his side and rest players. That is such a valuable thing to be able to do ahead of a Champions League week, and to have still won the game. I think he'll be very, very pleased. I think particularly with Bunny Shaw being able to keep her fresh to start against Barcelona will give him a huge boost. Look, this was a really good win for Manchester City because it's one of those games where I think we've seen them maybe slip up in recent years, or the kind of game where they might not have seen the job through. They were a little bit lucky that West Ham had the goal disallowed in very early on in the game for Asai, that I think replays showed she looked onside. But that aside, they got the job done. And I think I said on the preview pod, when their first 11 are all available, this Man City team are for me, the best 11 in the league, and right up there as one of the best 11s in Europe. So it'll be really interesting to see how they get on Wednesday against Barcelona. It's a real test of where they're at in terms of their development and how good a game they can give the European champions.
Yep, certainly is. Lauren Hemp had an impact again. She was at the heart of everything that City did offensively, as she tends to be. She became the youngest player to reach 50 WSL goals after that goal in the first half, which is another incredible achievement, Susie.
Yeah, like a huge achievement. Super talented player. I just thought she was brilliant in this game as well. Obviously scores, but clips the woodwork, puts it over the bar, forced a save off the line, just all action performance. The only thing is she can maybe add some more goals to her game. She got 11 goals last season, which was her best tally for City in WSL. I think it was she's hit 10 once before, and if she could go a little bit better than that, I think she'd push her game onto the next level. She does so much, she's so creative. She could have had 3 or 4 in this game alone, and it's nice to see her being quite fluid in that front line for City. They're usually quite rigid, but for me this season have looked a little bit more experimental. I think having Miedemar in there, Shaw's been drifting wide occasionally. When Mary's on the pitch, she's dipping back a little bit. It's just all a little bit more organic and less predictable, which I think could be really, really good for them.
Yeah. Listen, I just want to, while you were talking there, no, I was 100% listening to you, but I was also checking in on Luton Town because I knew we were better than bottom of the table. You're looking at the wrong table. We're second. We beat, I know, producer Sophie has her head in her hands currently. We beat Enfield yesterday by 1-0, and we're actually second. We are 6 points behind Royston Town in the Eastern Region Women's Premier Division. So, to you.
What is this table I'm looking at?
An old one. And this is, and listen, hereby lies the problem lower down the leagues. Getting access to information is an absolute nightmare.
Oh, Google's latest table is 2018-2019. That's why.
I know it is. I know.
That's
and yes,
so
we were
poor.
bottom then. But that would be an incredible season, having played 22 games in October. By October, that is some.
Okay, I wasn't paying attention.
That's a player loading issue, I would suggest. We're talking about welfare a lot. Listen, anyway, I digress. Sorry. Our petty squabbles should not come onto the pod, Susie. Sophie, West Ham have now lost 12 in 13 games against City, and they almost had the perfect start with Vivian Assayi having the ball in the back of the net. The flag went up, though. She was offside. Rhiannon Skinner particularly unhappy with that decision. She said, I haven't spoken to the referee about it. It's one to follow up with after the game. She's 2 yards onside. These are the things that have to be looked at because goals change games. Is she right?
Yes, because that gets you off to a different start, right? When you have a goal ahead at that early, I mean, you can't tell what's going to happen, and Manchester City are always going to be the favourites in that game, but it does give you a different platform to build off, and it was a frustrating decision. I heard from people who were there live who said it looked offside, but when I watched it again and again on the replay, it was onside. I'm not quite sure. She timed her run perfectly. But I think there is a lot that Rhiannon Skinner can actually take from these first few games of the season, right? So like the Manchester United game, yes, that was a 3-0 loss, but they performed pretty well. They had their chances, and they played Manchester United, Manchester City. They had their chances again yesterday. Yes, City were better, especially in the second half, but I do think they had Dagny headed wide, which you probably put your money on her to score those kind of goals. She was free in the box. So I think there are positives there. They won big midweek as well against Portsmouth. So they won't really be too worried about these games against the two Manchester sides. I think it would be more about, getting the points against Liverpool like they did last week and those kind of teams in and around them.
Yeah, I agree with you. Let's just give you a brief update on the latest action in the Championship. Charlton dropped their first points of the season, but they did rescue a 3-3 draw with Sunderland thanks to a late double from Karin Moyer. Durham continued their good start with a 1-0 victory over North East rivals Newcastle United, so they go second. Christy Harrison-Murray scored on her 101st appearance in Birmingham's win over Blackburn, while Isabel Goodwin scored 4 in London City's 5-1 victory over Portsmouth. Finally, Bristol City secured their first win of the season, beating Sheffield United 4-2. Right, the Champions League gets underway this week. Some headline fixtures. Tom's already mentioned Manchester City hosting Barcelona as they make their return to the group stage. Chelsea will entertain familiar foes Real Madrid, and Arsenal travel to Munich. Tom, you're going to be up there in the northwest for City Barcelona on Wednesday. I've heard that you have high hopes as well. Can Gareth Taylor's side really do it against the European champions?
I think they've got a really good chance of giving him a good game. Yeah, I was laughed by a colleague from another newspaper who shall remain nameless. Out of respect to her, I was laughed at in the press box at Brighton at the suggestion that Man City might get a result in this game. So, and I believe we're sitting near each other in the press lounge on Wednesday night. So. I'm sure she will either take great joy in reminding me of that when Barcelona win by a huge scoreline, or I shall be glancing my eye across that. Yeah, they know who they are. But in all seriousness, I can't wait for this game.
Sophie's blushing.
No, I cannot wait for this game. I really can't.
I was just going to say, Sophie, have you got anything to say?
I may have partaken in the laughter a little bit.
But no, in all seriousness, what a fantastic game to start this group, and I think that there's no better way to try and make a statement about your intentions to kind of go far in Europe than by putting on a good performance against the reigning champions. Barcelona have looked in quite ominously strong form domestically. They're scoring a lot of goals, but this is just pure box office, really. I think all three English sides have got very interesting and quite difficult games, actually. Probably Chelsea's ever so slightly the easier of the three. And the context, of course, that Arsenal and Chelsea are playing each other this weekend. I mean, that's just huge to be sandwiched in between the two first rounds of European fixtures. You know, I have a little bit of sympathy for Arsenal in that they're playing Chelsea on Saturday. Arsenal play Wednesday in Europe, whereas Chelsea, their opponents, are playing Tuesday and Thursday. That's just life. Sometimes these things happen, of course. There's no perfect calendar, but I do have sympathy for Arsenal with that, and I think that's a weird inconsistency from UEFA that we need to talk about. Like, why in some weeks is it Tuesday, Wednesday, and other weeks it's Wednesday, Thursday? That needs to be, that in future seasons that needs to stop. I think that's a load of nonsense, frankly. And when so many European leagues play their women's football on a Sunday traditionally, then why are we even having Tuesday dates in the Champions League? That's just a little rant out of the way. But that aside, I can't wait for these games, and I think Bayern, Arsenal and Man City, Barcelona in particular will be pure box office, and bring it on.
Yeah, and bring on you taking on UEFA as well. I'm here for that battle. Go on, Tom. You make a very, very good point. Susie, are you looking forward to a night at Stamford Bridge on Tuesday? Any problems expected for Sonia Bombastor and Chelsea?
Well, I hope the DJ's on it again, because Champions League under the lights, or was it? No, it wasn't Champions League, was it? It was WSL under the lights for the. It was Sockgate.
It was Sockgate, and I tell you what, we needed the DJ to be on it that night because he had to wait so long for the game to kick off.
Fingers crossed, he's on form on Tuesday. But I think it'll be a good game. I think, obviously Real Madrid are doing very, very well in the Liga. It's in second, joint on points with Barcelona and Atletico. I think they play Atletico as well after this fixture, so big tie coming up for them, big week. But they're not well established in Europe yet as a powerhouse. They're still building. They're at the start of their journey, and in theory, it should be a straightforward match for a squad of Chelsea's quality to deal with. But an interesting first test of Sonia Bombastor's European credentials at a new club.
Yeah. Sophie, Tom's already bigged up the game that you're heading out to in Germany and Munich. How do Arsenal pick themselves up after the disappointment of the weekend? How do you see this one going?
Yeah, I'm going on a European tour, so I'm very excited about that. Oktoberfest and music. In Munich, not music.
There will be music as well, I'm sure.
I'm not going to say no to that. But no, I think Arsenal, it will be a better opponent for them than Everton. Munich aren't going to do what Everton did at the weekend, so they will have a bit more space out there. And I just remember that, that game a couple of seasons back at the Emirates, and I know that was at home, but it was a very, very special night. And I think they can build on that experience, even though it was quite, 2 years ago now, but I think they can build on that knowledge, and they've got a lot of the same players there as well. So I think it's all to play for. I can see goals in it at either end as well. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how they match up.
Yeah, very much looking forward to all of those fixtures, and we'll update you on them, of course, next week in the pod. Any other business? Well, just before we started recording, a little bit earlier than usual, we're recording on a Monday night this week, and we've just heard that Bibi Steinhaus-Webb is leaving her position as Select Group Women's Professional Game Director to take up a role at FIFA. Bibi's been pivotal in transforming the women's professional officiating pathway. This is the message that came out from PGMOL, who'd like to wish her all the very best for the future, which we would as well, because Bibi is a friend of the pod. Myself and Susie in particular have spent a lot of time in her company, and she is a formidable force and will do some fantastic work at FIFA, no doubt. But what she's done for the game here has been fantastic, Susie.
Yeah, I'm really sad. I did a fantastic interview. I spent the day at their PGMOL Women's Select Group like training session last season. Like, I think the headline in my piece, I've just pulled it up, was, "I've never understood why anyone would want to be a referee. Now I do." Because her passion and enthusiasm for refereeing is just so unbelievably infectious, and it just like bleeds through everything the PGMOL are doing refereeing wise. Like, you can feel her presence in like all the work that's being done, so it's gonna be really interesting to see how they're able to maintain the like momentum of it without her as like this like unstoppable driving force. But hopefully she can bring it to FIFA, though, you know, who knows if a massive rock can be moved.
She'll move it, believe me. She'll move it in her own unique way, I am sure. So what's going on with England pathway stuff at the minute? Exciting times, particularly for the under-17s.
Yeah, it is really, really exciting times for all youth levels of the English women at the moment. But the under-17, so I've been at St George's Park all day today. They started their European qualification for next year's Euros, so they play round 1 and then they play round 2, and then if they get through that, they get to the Euros next summer. This group is actually probably quite a young group compared to normal, because the other under-17s are currently probably on their way to Miami right now to do their pre-camp for the under-17 World Cup in the Dominican Republic that kicks off in just over a week's time. It's going to be an incredible experience, I think, for all of the group out there. It's the first time England have got to a World Cup since I think it was like they were there in 2008, and then they got there in 2016. So the 2016 era was like the Alessia Russo, Georgia Stanway era of the under-17s. And now this is the first time since that point that we've reached a World Cup. So very, very exciting for them. I have watched them a lot. I was at the Euros last summer. It's a very, very talented young group of women. They're going to have an incredible experience out there. They're playing Kenya, Mexico, and North Korea. So 3 opposition that they've never really played before, never really encountered before, because at that level they kind of tend to just play European opposition. So it's going to be an incredible experience to see how they can do out there. In terms of the pathway, it's a really interesting time because the under-17s is going to an annual World Cup after this year. So the next 5 years are going to have a World Cup, and they're all going to be held in Morocco. And it's a real challenge, I think, for the pathway at England to be able to learn how to manage that and how to deal with having a Euros probably in May time, and then a World Cup in, you know, the autumn time, around this time every single year. It's going to be a bit of a balancing act, I think, while the next year of Euros is happening. So that's going to be a bit interesting to see how that happens, but it's very exciting. We've got lots of talent coming through. The girls today were really, really good as well, and have big futures ahead of them.
Exciting times, that's for sure. Listen, all of you, enjoy your little trips away, even if Susie's is the shortest in terms of, I'll give you a wave. I'm not that far from Kingsmeadow.
Stamford Bridge.
Oh, of course it is. Oh my God, that's even closer. What a muppet. What a muppet. I knew it was at Stamford Bridge. Oh my goodness me. You tell we're recording late. There's a giddiness. Whenever we do a Monday night pod, there's always a giddiness to it. And I feel like we've had that tonight. Tom, thank you for always bringing the sensibility and calming us all down.
Oh, lovely to see you. No, chat soon.
Soph, lovely to see you.
Great to be back on.
See you soon. Susie, bye.
Bye. I think we should try and go to a Luton Town ladies game between now and Christmas.
100%. They were at Barton yesterday, which is where they play their home games, and it was a 1-0 victory. And listen, Luton Town ladies, if anybody is listening, I apologise. You know I'm normally well up with your matches and what's going on, and I hadn't been at all this week, so apologies for not repping properly and shutting Susie down instantly with her abuse. Right, keep having your say by sending in your questions via X. Email us at womensfootballweekly@theguardian.com if you would like. And as ever, a reminder to sign up for our bi-weekly women's football newsletter. All you need to do is search Moving the Goalposts Sign Up. And in Wednesday's piece, our very own Sophie Downey is going to be looking at Norwegian side Vålerenga ahead of their first ever Champions League appearance. The Guardian Women's Football Weekly is produced by Sophie Downey and Silas Gray. Music composition was by Laura Iredale. Our executive producer is Sal Ahmad.
This is The Guardian.